All right, this past weekend was Easter, and as I was thinking about it, I realized that as an athlete, there is a lot to learn from the life of Jesus. As a business person for myself, there's a lot of things that I've learned, and I realize a lot of that translates to you guys as athletes. And so I wanted to take some time to be like, hey, what are five key things that athletes can learn from the life of Jesus? When we talk about his purpose, his discipline, his peace, just how he approached his life was an example of really how to be a great human, but also, again, how you can be a great athlete whether you're Christian or not. I want to make sure that you guys hear this. Like, really just hear the message. Like, you guys don't have to be Christian to get something out of this. I know that there's going to be some things that you can walk away with to start shifting how you live and how you work as an athlete. And so, starting off with number one, the core piece of this is you've got to play with purpose, not validation. So, verse, for example, for this is whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters. And that's Colossians 3:20. A lot of us as athletes, as humans in general, we focus on external validation. As an athlete, you're looking at your stats, you're looking at approval, you're looking at, coaches' approval, friends' approval, scholarships, just clout in general. You often want to seek that attention. But when your identity is built on outside praise, it can fall apart easily, very, very easily. Things can just go wrong. You allow a home run and your whole mental game falls apart. You get a loss in general and you get disrupted and you question your future in your sport. But here's the deal. Jesus did not live for applause. He often was criticized, spat on, yelled at, argued with. He had people throughout his ministry constantly trying to come at him. They were constantly trying to find something that they could trap him in, and they never did. He and it's a lot of that has to do with he lived with internal purpose. He protected his peace and he focused on what mattered inside rather than what was going on the outside. So, when we talk about, not living for human masters, not focusing on just serving our human nature, if you're not a Christ follower, what is your foundation? What is your faith? What is the thing that keeps you going? That is deeper than just being an athlete. That is what you have to focus on. When we live for, again, that external validation, we will feel empty. We will give up a lot easier. But if we find a deeper why, we find a deeper internal purpose, then when something gets messed up, when life's upset, we can keep going. When we look at Jesus, he was doubted, he was mocked, he was rejected, yet he kept going. He did not stop until his ministry was finished, until he decided when he was going to stop. So when you know why you show up every day, who you're playing for, you will not need the likes or the rankings to feel confident. You won't need to feel validated by your 5-star ranking or how many likes you got on your post or how many college offers you got. You will feel validated by what's going on inside. You will feel validated by the work that you put in, by the effort that you put in, by the intention and just the heart that you put into your work. So your internal purpose is going to give you freedom. Validation is going to fade. The people that follow you are going to eventually forget about you at some point. There are many pro athletes that are essentially forgotten at this point. So play for something bigger than just someone else's reaction. Number two, discipline over motivation. So this is one of my favorite verses is no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. This is Hebrews 12:11. So when we talk about this, no discipline seems pleasant at the time. It's often painful. Discipline is often painful. It does not feel good in the moment. However, in time, it gets better. We talk about my mentor was literally just talking to me about this like 2 hours ago. He was talking about how there is a winter. There is this cold time, this harsh time where you may not see a lot of growth. You may not see the fruit of your labor, the hard work that you're putting in. but soon there's a spring coming. There's a spring where some of those roots start growing and some of those things start coming out of the ground, and you start seeing the fruit of your labor. You start seeing the work that you put in. And then there's a summer. There's a summer where everything's shining, everything's bright, everything's going pretty dang well. This is part of that process. We've got to, be disciplined enough in the winter, in the fall, in order to see the fruit in the spring and the summer. When we look at Jesus, again, another example, he didn't always feel like doing what was hard. Even if you look at him in the garden, you look at him right before he was going to die. He knew he was going to die even before he was arrested. He knew he was going to be on the cross. He knew he was going to die for everybody else. Yeah, and it was something where it hurt. Like, he's like, I don't want this, but he did it anyways. He found peace. He found, he continued to pursue it even when it was painful, even when people were hating on him, even when his friends abandoned him. That's another important point, guys. Your friends might abandon you because of the hard work that you put in, because that you are laser focused on your purpose. You may lose boyfriends or girlfriends because they don't understand what you are trying to do, that you are trying to maximize your God-given gifts. And so understand that, like, you may lose people. That may suck, but you got to stay disciplined and not quit, even in the painful moments. Motivation often is just an emotion. It's this quick feeling. It's this quick quote that you read on Instagram, or this hype video that you see from somebody, and you get motivated, you get excited, but then the next day that motivation's gone. Discipline is what's going to help you do it when you don't have motivation. Discipline helps you put in the work when you do not have motivation. So make sure that you develop discipline, not just motivation, that you chase discipline, not just motivation. Discipline is showing up when it's inconvenient. It's getting your meals in. It's getting your workouts in, even when you're tired, even when there's distractions. It's saying, no, like, I got to do my thing. I got to get this thing done to keep going. Motivation will get you started. It can help you get your foot in the door, take that first step. But you got to have discipline to keep going when somebody is trying to close that door on you, when they're trying to slam the door on your foot. You've got to have discipline to keep going through that. Number 3, sacrifice is the price of growth. So this verse, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. And that's Luke 9:23. Jesus never said life was going to be easy. He never said that. He said that things were going to get hard. He continually said that life was going to be hard. And it was going to be even harder after he left, after he died. It was going to get worse. The persecution, the hate, all the things that were thrown the disciples' way. But when you look at him, Jesus was the perfect example of sacrifice. He was God. He came to earth as God, but he set aside his godly abilities. He set aside his perfection in order to live as a human. And he understood what it was like to be in pain, to actually suffer as we suffer. He sacrificed all of his perfection, all of his heavenly kingdom to come down and to feel what we feel, and to ultimately die on the cross with the ultimate sacrifice. He died for other people. He died for us on a cross in one of the most painful ways to die. And he did it willingly. It wasn't like somebody was like, oh, you got to do this. No, he willingly came to the cross and died so that he could set us free. So understand, he had sacrificed for his ultimate purpose. He had a calling, he had a purpose for the life that he lived on earth, and he sacrificed everything, including his life, to accomplish that purpose. And so this is where I really feel like this is where I get a little emotional, because when I think about the last few years of building this business and really trying to serve you guys as athletes, this is my calling, this is my purpose. And there's a lot of things that I've had thrown my way. There's a lot of, financial things, family things, people doubting me, rejection. Oh my gosh, the level of rejection I've gotten in the last few years, like, it's hard. But at the same time, I know that this is my purpose, this is my calling, and I got to keep figuring it out until I get more and more momentum. And I'm seeing every single year that I'm developing, that I'm growing, that I'm starting to see more and more of the fruit of my labor. I'm getting more into my springtime, where I'm starting to see some of that fruit. And it's going to be a continual process. I'm going to go through another winter. I'm going to go through more storms. But at the same time, if I continue to cling to my purpose, then all of these sacrifices, they're not strong enough to pull me down. I've gone through enough in my life to be like, screw it, I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep fighting. I'm gonna figure this out because I know that this is my calling. When you guys face trials, you guys will face trials, whether it be as an athlete or whether it just be as a human itself. Some of you guys are products of divorce like I am. Some of you have lost family members or parents like I have. Some of you have lived in very sketchy environments like I have. Some of you guys have lived in far sketchier environments than I have. Yet, if you keep pursuing, you keep going, you keep finding that discipline, and you sacrifice some of that comfort, you accept that it's going to be uncomfortable, and you keep going, you're going to be a much stronger, more resilient person. But you've got to go through trials in order to get stronger. There's no way around it. You've got to fail in order to succeed. I love the quote, the greats in anything, in athletes, in business, and whatever, it's they fail more than anybody else in order to succeed. They're willing to keep failing. Einstein was willing to keep failing until he succeeded. Like, be determined about your purpose. If this is truly your calling, then go all out. Once you're done with this thing, though, don't tie your identity to strictly sports. Find your next, there's going to be a next thing. There's going to be a next thing in your life, and that can help you and your purpose. Everything you learn right now is going to help you in your purpose now, but it'll help you with developing and fulfilling that purpose later as well. But it does take daily sacrifices. You will not reach your potential, your full potential, by holding on to things, by being comfortable, by not really challenging yourself. If you're constantly eating junk food, sleeping in, scrolling TikTok, then you're not going to really reach your full potential. You have to make some of those sacrifices. So if you want different results, you got to make different choices. All right, number 4, begin with the end in mind. This verse is my verse for the year. So this is Hebrews 12, 1-2. So basically, we're rewinding from one of our previous verses here. And it's, let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, who for the joy set before him endured the cross. So one reason I love this verse is you start off right off with run with endurance the race that is set before us. You have a race. You have your life. You have your journey as an athlete. You have this race that you're on. You will not win that race if you don't have endurance. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. Even if you are a sprinter, this is a marathon. You can't just become a sprinter without running some marathons. You gotta put in the reps. You gotta put in the work. You gotta keep freaking going. However, it's not, we don't just stop there. In verse 2, we talk about we got to fix our eyes on Jesus, the perfect example of somebody who ran his race with endurance, who kept going when things got hard, who kept finding a way to open the hearts and minds of people. We got to do the same thing. And here's the deal. Right before that, like the first part of verse 1, they actually say, they talk about the other saints. They talk about all these people that in chapter 11, they unpack. The entire chapter 11 unpacks all of these people throughout the Bible who are perfect examples of people who ran their race with endurance. We talk about Joseph, who went through a lot of freaking crap that Joseph went through, getting imprisoned again, getting sold into slavery, nearly getting killed a couple different times. And he did all that and he kept going. And then he ended up becoming basically number 2 in Egypt, like becoming right under Pharaoh, being in charge of the land essentially, because he continued to run his race with endurance. You know, we have Job, we have all these different examples in the Old Testament and New of people who kept freaking going when things got hard. Same thing with Jesus, kept going even when things got hard. He didn't just like survive his suffering, he endured it with vision. He saw what was ahead, he saw Resurrection Sunday, he saw what was coming. He knew what was coming, and so that's how he endured the cross. He saw the people around him, he saw the 2 other guys that were on crosses, and he was like, yeah, I'm dying for them. I'm dying for the people that are yelling and spitting on me. I'm dying for the people who just abandoned me. He did it anyways. So we got to run the race with endurance. We got to look at what is our end. You know, look at 6 months from now, 6 years from now. Who do you want to become? What do you want to accomplish? But I want to stress to you guys, focus on the who. Number 1, you got to focus on your who. This is when I do goal setting with my clients. We don't start with what are you going to do? We start with who are you going to become? You cannot do the things if you can't become the person who actually does the things. If you want to be a D1 athlete, you got to be like a D1 athlete. You got to be the who that actually does those things. You know, you got to change who you are as a person. And so start with your who. You know, and that's where I go back to your faith, your beliefs. You know, dig deep on those. Start with that. Then we can go to the what do you want to accomplish, the daily actions, all those little specifics. But let's first start with who do you want to become? I want to impact 1 million youth lives. That's part of my who, that's part of my calling. You know, I want to fulfill my first name's meaning. My full name, Nicholas, the definition or the interpretation is victory of the people. And I don't know fully what that'll look like in my life, but I've come to realize that that's part of my calling. And so that's where I'm, you know, continuing to wrestle with that, both in 6 months from now, both in, you know, this year in 2025, but also 6 years, you know, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, you know, and that's where we have to look at that bigger vision. That's where we look at the end goal. We got to look at where we are going so that we can continue to fix our eyes on that until we get there, you know, and then when we get there, there's probably going to be another race. There's probably going to be another mountain to climb. But that's where we build that endurance. We keep going. We don't quit when things get hard. You know, and that's where the discipline comes in. That's where the sacrifice, that's where the hope, the faith, the deeper why, that's where all of that comes from. We've got to have that deeper why. We've got to have that long-term vision in mind. I talk about the discipline, the sacrifice, all these things that are important, but we cannot have the discipline, the sacrifice, the drive, the motivation, all the things. We cannot accomplish the work if we do not rest. Jesus was God, yet he still needed to rest. He came down in human form to understand more of just who we are. You know, he became like us. And in order to be like us and to really be a perfect human, he had to rest. You know, I've got multiple verses right here. This is just 4, and I'm pretty sure there's more than this. Luke 5:16, but Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. There's Matthew 14:23. After he dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. So, by himself. Mark 6:31. Come with me and by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. So he wanted all of his disciples to rest. John 4:6. Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well, right next to a Samaritan, right next to a person that other people in his culture, in the Jewish culture, would have despised, would have never come near, especially as a woman, would never come near. And he's like, no, I'm going to go rest, and I'm going to go actually rest right next to this woman who you guys don't really like. Even his disciples are like, what the heck are you doing? Why are you hanging out with this person? Like, super confused. So not only was he still fulfilling his purpose, he found a way to rest as well. And he had a conversation. And he opened a door to a whole new community that otherwise would not have heard his vision and his heart for them. And there's more examples. Again, in the garden, he went off to pray by himself. On the boat, he was resting on the boat while the storm was going. He's like, I'm still sleeping, even though the storm. And the disciples are panicking. They're like, and he's like, why are you panicking? Like, do you forget who I am? And then he's like, calm the storm, boom, done, we're good. So he did not grind 24/7. He found time to rest. I'm going to call out one of my athletes here, Hudson. He found time to rest. He knew when to get quiet. He knew when to slow down. He knew when to recharge so that he wasn't constantly grinding his body into the ground, so that he could rest and recover and feel rejuvenated the next day. So that he could continue fulfilling his purpose, he went out to find rest. Now, sometimes in rest, you might still get disrupted. You might be in the middle of rest and somebody disrupts you. Multiple examples. Jesus goes and tries to rest, he's like, I'm going to go to a silent place to pray. And then a crowd comes in and is like, hey, wait, there he goes. Let's go get him. Let's go talk to him. Let's go, get healed. And so he still was peaceful in those moments. He still endured. But he always found times to rest and to spend time with God. So with his Father. So rest isn't weakness. It is essential if you want to really fulfill your purpose, if you want to fulfill this calling. Jesus was literally a perfect human, yet he took time to pause and rest. So you can too. Protect your recovery, or protect your peace, as that common phrase, protect your peace. Yes, train hard. Yes, put in that work, but you also got to recover like a pro. By the way, if you guys want a checklist of recover like a pro, DM me on Instagram, DM me on Twitter, say recovered, and I can send you my recovery checklist of things you got to do to maximize that recovery. Now, if you want to level up your performance mentally, physically, spiritually, then take these 5 lessons from Jesus into your weeks, into your months, into your daily routines. You've got to have purpose. You've got to have discipline. You've got to be willing to sacrifice things. You've got to have vision. You've got to look at what's ahead. That's what's going to keep you going, is looking at what the end goal is, looking at where you're going, and enjoying the process as you get there. And then you got to find rest. You cannot do any of these things if you don't ever rest. Again, this isn't just a church thing. This is a human thing. We need these things to be better athletes, to be better leaders, to be better humans. We've got to have these things. So hopefully this was helpful for you guys. Thanks for listening. If this episode encouraged you, share it with a teammate, share it with a coach, share it with a friend, share it with somebody who needs to hear this. And make sure that you guys are subscribed, because we talk about performance, mindset, nutrition, strength training, speed, all the things on here. And as always, keep striving for greatness.